Die Hard isn't merely an action movie, it's a classic. Bruce Willis, playing John McClane, transformed the idea of the everyman hero, taking on terrorists, explosions, and impossible situations with determination and humor. Yet, at some point, this legendary franchise began to lose its way. Critical flops, studio meddling, and a hero who aged in real time turned Die Hard from a thrilling benchmark to a cautionary tale. Today, we're breaking down exactly what happened to the Die Hard franchise, why it stumbled, where it failed, and whether John McClane's legacy can survive Hollywood's mistakes. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Bruce Willis wasn't just Die Hard's face, he was its heartbeat. From 1988, he made John McClane tough, funny, and real. A regular New York cop, suddenly a screen legend. Off camera though, things were shifting in ways only the closest observers noticed. Fans spotted it first. A stumble here, a pause there, delivery just a tad slower. Minor? Maybe, but those working with him sensed something deeper brewing. In his later films, even finishing lines became an exhausting effort. March 2022, the family confirmed aphasia, speech and comprehension affected. Stepped back from acting. Less than a year later, February 2023, brought the heavier blow: frontotemporal dementia. Slowly, it attacks the brain's frontal and temporal lobes, chipping away at speech, movement, and behavior. Even small things become monumental. Talking, walking across a set, following cues. The crew had noticed it long before the public. Scripts were trimmed, dialogue shortened, stunts scaled back, and production adjusted around him. Yet, Willis still commanded every frame, every scene. McClane's edge softened, but grit, humor, and that stubborn streak unmistakably present. Hollywood noticed. For decades, action heroes were portrayed as untouchable, larger than life. Willis proved that they are human, fallible, and real. Through it all, he remained professional, funny, resilient, and fiercely committed. On screen, McClane moved more slowly, yes, but the wit, determination, and refusal to quit, the very qualities that made him unforgettable, still show. His struggle didn't just slow him down, it closed a chapter, ended the original Die Hard era, and reminded fans everywhere, even legends carry scars. When 2013's A Good Day to Die Hard hit theaters, it aimed to continue McClane's story, but instead, it slammed the franchise into the ground. Critics were harsh. Many called it a limp parody, and The Hollywood Reporter famously labeled it last is least. For fans of the first four films, the movie felt like a betrayal. The sharp humor, tense action, and grounded stakes that made Die Hard a classic were mostly gone, replaced by flashy set pieces and heavy CGI. Box office numbers showed a drop. In the US, the film earned just $67.3 million on a $92 million budget, the franchise's lowest domestic total. Overseas, it brought in $237 million, making a worldwide total of $304 million, still well below Live Free or Die Hard's $383 million. Fans were losing interest. Critics and viewers pointed to several problems. CGI often felt fake, taking tension out of important scenes. The story moved fast but felt disjointed, and McClane ended up in globe-trotting scenarios with little emotional weight. Fans voiced their frustration on forums and IMDb. One wrote, "It's like McClane became a cartoon. No edge, no grit, just explosions." Another said, "I wanted the Die Hard I knew, not this overblown spectacle." The fallout was significant. The movie hurt the franchise's reputation and left people questioning whether McClane could still carry a film. Die Hard had once set the bar for smart, character-driven action. After this installment, studios and audiences alike wondered if the classic everyman versus impossible odds approach still worked. A Good Day to Die Hard exposed the franchise's weakness: over-reliance on spectacle, weak storytelling, and a shrinking connection with core fans. For a series that once defined modern action cinema, the fifth film was a painful reminder that even legends can stumble when the magic disappears. When Live Free or Die Hard hit theaters in 2007, audiences noticed something off almost immediately. John McClane, famous for his razor-sharp one-liners and brutal bloody takedowns, felt strangely watered down. The studio pushed the film into PG-13 territory. To reach a broader audience and boost ticket sales, much of the franchise's grit was removed. Blood was digitally erased. Profanity was muted. McClane's iconic line, "Yippee-ki-yay, mother..." was cut off mid-phrase with a gunshot. For fans, this wasn't just a small change, it felt like a betrayal. Forums filled with complaints about a sanitized McClane. Many argued the edits drained his authenticity. On IMDb, one reviewer called it Die Hard Light. Another wrote, they took the teeth out of the shark. The raw tension and unpredictability that made McClane compelling were replaced with action aimed at younger viewers. Even Willis expressed doubts. He said McClane was always meant for an R-rated world. While he understood the studio's reasoning, he suggested it compromised the franchise's spirit. It's not the film I would have made, he admitted. Comparing the PG-13 version to the R-rated originals makes the gap clear. McClane went from a vulnerable everyman to a watered-down version of himself. In Die Hard, violence was visceral. Every injury left a mark, and the language matched the stakes. By contrast, Live Free or Die Hard featured glossy car chases and computer-generated stunts with little consequence. McClane went from vulnerable everyman fighting tooth and nail for survival to a near-invincible action figure bouncing between set pieces. Financially, the strategy worked, grossing over $380 million worldwide. But the cost was integrity. Longtime fans saw it as a turning point, where the franchise prioritized appealing to a wider audience rather than staying true to its DNA. In chasing broader demographics, Die Hard lost part of what made it iconic: its grit, danger, and unapologetic edge. In the end, the PG-13 controversy became a symbol of Hollywood's growing tendency to dilute R-rated classics for commercial gain. McClane survived, but not without scars. Only this time, they weren't from the villains he fought, but from the studio decisions that reshaped him. The Die Hard franchise didn't just suffer from weak scripts and misfires, it also fell victim to corporate tug-of-war. Originally a jewel in 20th Century Fox's crown, the series shifted hands when Disney acquired Fox in 2019. That merger sent shockwaves through Hollywood, and suddenly, the gritty, foul-mouthed world of John McClane was sitting in the same catalog as Pixar and Marvel. The problem? Disney has always been cautious with R-rated content, preferring family-friendly tentpoles over raw, bloody action. This change in ownership froze the future of the franchise. For years, a project titled McClane had been in development, a hybrid prequel and sequel that would explore both a young rookie cop McClane in 1970s New York and the seasoned veteran we knew from later films. Len Wiseman was attached to direct, and early drafts promised a story that might revitalize the character. But once Disney took control, the project stalled and was quietly cancelled. The official reason? It didn't fit the studio's new vision. And that's where the cultural clash comes in. Fox had built a reputation for riskier, adult-driven blockbusters. Disney, on the other hand, has a brand identity tied to theme parks, toys, and global merchandising. Hardly a comfortable home for an R-rated cop who shouts profanities and leaves a trail of broken glass behind him. Even though Disney later experimented with distributing R-rated projects under subsidiary labels, Die Hard never made it out of developmental limbo. The uncertainty left fans frustrated. Streaming platforms like Hulu, also owned by Disney, offered a glimmer of hope for a grittier McClane return. Yet the studio's silence suggested little appetite for reviving a franchise that didn't fit their brand. As one fan wrote online, if Disney touches it, they'll either water it down or shelve it forever. The result? A legendary action series trapped in ownership limbo. It's too violent and profane for Disney's image, but too iconic to ignore. With Bruce Willis retired, any revival would be haunted by his absence. The franchise now sits between corporate caution and fan nostalgia with no clear path forward. When Die Hard premiered in 1988, Bruce Willis was just 33 years old. He wasn't a bodybuilder like Schwarzenegger or Stallone. He was an everyman cop with a receding hairline and a bad case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. That relatability became the magic of John McClane. He bled, he limped, he made mistakes, and somehow he still won. Fast forward to 2013's A Good Day to Die Hard. By then, Willis was 58, and critics couldn't ignore what fans were already whispering. McClane no longer felt like the underdog. His movements were slower, the physicality less convincing, and the weariness impossible to hide. Unlike larger-than-life action stars who could lean on superhuman personas, McClane's appeal had always been that he was just a guy, Tired, flawed, but determined. Watching him leap through explosions in his late 50s strained believability. Scripts tried to compensate but rarely succeeded. Live Free or Die Hard paired him with a younger, tech-savvy sidekick in Justin Long, as if McClane needed a new generation to balance his old-school grit. By the fifth film, his own son was thrown into the mix, turning McClane into more of a passenger rather than a driver of the story. Instead of embracing his age and writing grounded action around it, the films pushed him into increasingly over-the-top stunts, surfing on trucks or surviving helicopter crashes that made him feel indestructible. That was never McClane's DNA. The difference with other aging franchises is clear. Rocky Balboa embraced Sylvester Stallone's age, slowing and grounding the fights so audiences could believe an older Rocky was still finding his dignity. Rambo leaned into raw brutality, showing a battle-worn warrior pushed to his limits. Willis, by contrast, got scripts that ignored his physical reality. Instead of showing vulnerability, the films turned him into a cartoonish superhero. It raises a bigger question in Hollywood. How long can action heroes stay believable? Fans want consistency, but they also want honesty. An older McClane could have worked if the stories let him struggle with age as much as he did with terrorists. By pretending nothing had changed, the franchise lost the one thing that made McClane timeless, his humanity. When Die Hard exploded onto screens in 1988, Hollywood discovered a new formula. One man trapped in a confined space facing overwhelming odds. It was lightning in a bottle. Studios quickly tried to replicate the success. Die Hard under a blank. Under Siege became Die Hard on a battleship. Speed was Die Hard on a bus. And even Air Force One was pitched as Die Hard on a plane. Initially, this approach worked. Many clones were box office hits, proving the brilliance of the original blueprint. But as with all trends, the more it was copied, the less special it became. By the mid-90s, knockoffs were everywhere. Some were clever, but many were forgettable. They all followed the same beats: a reluctant hero, a ticking clock, and a tight claustrophobic setting. In trying to copy Die Hard, studios often drained the idea of its spark. Worse, the sequels themselves started to feel like imitators. Instead of evolving beyond the original, later films doubled down on the same formula. McClane faced terrorists again, now in bigger, louder locations. What had once felt fresh, Nakatomi Plaza, became sprawling, globe-trotting chaos. The franchise turned into the very kind of blockbuster it had inspired. The difference is striking. Speed built tension with a simple, high-concept idea and non-stop momentum. Under Siege paired a strong villain with Steven Seagal, hitting the right balance of grit and spectacle. Many imitators failed because they forgot the story's core: character. McClane wasn't just a man taking down bad guys. He was a flawed cop, bleeding and breaking down while juggling family struggles. Remove that humanity and the Die Hard formula becomes hollow. By trying to one-up itself and its imitators, the franchise forgot its own lesson. Less is more. Bigger stunts and louder explosions only distanced McClane from the everyman hero audiences loved. The clones had an excuse: they were copycats. Die Hard did not. In the original Die Hard, McClane wasn't just an action hero, he was a man with real flaws, fighting to protect his family. His marriage was falling apart, his pride was bruised, and every cut and scrape in Nakatomi Plaza reflected his personal struggles. By the time he reconciled with Holly, the victory felt bigger than defeating Hans Gruber. It was McClane overcoming his own demons. That vulnerability was the heart of the franchise, but as the sequels came out, that depth started to fade. In Die Hard 2, the marriage subplot was still there, but only as a background note while McClane cracked wise between explosions. By Die Hard with a Vengeance, Holly was gone entirely, and McClane was back to operating solo. Screenwriters patched the absence with new partners, Samuel L. Jackson's Zeus being the best example, but the heart of the story slipped. By Live Free or Die Hard, McClane was divorced, estranged from his daughter, and written more as a grumpy action machine than a struggling man. Fans noticed immediately. Early McClane was relatable. He smoked too much, got scared, and admitted when he was out of his depth. Later, McClane shrugged off explosions, survived impossible stunts, and carried on like nothing happened. That shift killed the emotional hook. Directors admitted the challenge. Len Wiseman, who helmed Live Free, said they tried to show McClane as an aging warrior, but instead of leaning into age and regret, the scripts doubled down on spectacle. Specific scenes highlight the change. Compare McClane pulling glass from his bloody feet in the original, whispering, "Come out to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs," to him taking on a helicopter with a car in Live Free. One moment screams vulnerability and dark humor, the other feels like Fast and Furious. McClane's humanity was replaced with blockbuster logic. His marriage was never salvaged, vulnerabilities erased, and relatability abandoned. What began as the story of a flawed cop overcoming impossible odds devolved into an empty spectacle starring a man who looked like McClane but no longer felt like him. The box office numbers tell a story of diminishing returns wrapped in ballooning budgets. The original Die Hard, 1988, earned around $140 million worldwide on a modest $28 million budget, a phenomenal return for an R-rated action film led by a relatively untested star. Die Hard 2, 1990, doubled the stakes, costing $70 million and grossing $240 million, cementing John McClane as a rising icon. By 1995, Die Hard with a Vengeance reached the franchise's commercial peak, earning $366 million worldwide, fueled by Samuel L. Jackson's star power and the growing international market. McClane had truly become a global figure, but cracks appeared in the 2000s. Live Free or Die Hard, 2007, with a $110 million budget, grossed $388 million worldwide. On paper, it was a win, but adjusted for inflation and marketing, margins were narrow. Domestically, it earned only $134 million, lagging behind contemporaries like The Bourne Ultimatum, signaling reliance on overseas audiences to sustain the franchise. By 2013, A Good Day to Die Hard flatlined. With a $92 million budget, it made just $67 million domestically, adding $237 million internationally for a $304 million total, a sharp decline from its predecessor. Fatigue had set in even abroad. Critics tore into the films, fans tuned out, and a franchise once synonymous with intelligent action limped along. Industry analysts pointed to rising budgets, tired scripts, and a star whose physicality no longer matched the role's demands. One trade report summed it up: franchises can age, but audiences won't pay premium prices for nostalgia without quality. The numbers showed more than just a financial slide. They revealed how viewers felt. McClane was no longer the thrilling underdog, but a recycled hero, and the franchise survived more from corporate habit than real fan demand. Die Hard had gone from groundbreaking to backbreaking, a warning about what happens when originality and authenticity give way to repetition. If the box office highlighted the symptoms, production troubles revealed the disease. Die Hard captured lightning in a bottle at first, but as the sequel stacked up, the chaos behind the scenes started to show on screen. The original faced its own hurdles: tight schedules, long night shoots, and Bruce Willis balancing TV work. But John McTiernan's clear direction kept everything precise. Later films didn't have that same focus. Die Hard 2 barreled into production to capitalize on the first film's success, resulting in continuity errors and repeated sequences. Willis called the shoot exhausting, with rewrites happening on the fly. By Die Hard with a Vengeance, the cracks were unmistakable. Its script began life as a standalone thriller, Simon says, awkwardly patched into a McClane story. Samuel L. Jackson's chemistry with Willis lifted the material, but the patchwork was obvious. One crew member quipped, "We were making it up as we went." Then came a 12-year gap before Live Free or Die Hard. Studios cycled through countless drafts, cyber terror plots, disaster scenarios, before landing on a PG-13 CGI-heavy version. Director Len Wiseman, brought in late, faced the challenge of turning grit into gloss. The rushed production showed uneven tone, clunky digital effects, and a strangely sanitized McClane. The real disaster hit with A Good Day to Die Hard. Shot in Eastern Europe under harsh conditions, it suffered from rewrites, studio meddling, and tensions between John Moore and Willis. The crew called the set chaotic and directionless. The final film looked polished but felt hollow, a patchwork of compromises. Long gaps worsened the problem. Each installment felt less like a continuation, more like a reboot, with new teams chasing magic that had slipped away. An aging star, changing genres, and fractured vision made consistency impossible. In the end, these production woes weren't just noise, they were the cracks that brought the skyscraper down. If there's one thing Hollywood loves, it's a formula that works. Die Hard had the perfect formula. One man, trapped in a dangerous situation, outnumbered and outgunned, surviving through grit, wit, and instinct. The catch? What was once groundbreaking quickly became limiting. The first film was pure magic. McClane's first fight in Nakatomi Plaza worked because it was tight, tense, and confined, a setup that redefined action. The sequel, though, felt like deja vu. Die Hard 2 shifted to an airport, trading skyscrapers for runways and planes 30,000 feet above, but the structure was nearly identical. The explosions were bigger, the action flashier, yet it carried the same backbone. One critic even summed it up as Die Hard on a runway. Fans had fun, but cracks in the formula were showing. Die Hard with a Vengeance tried a shakeup, spreading the action across New York in a citywide scavenger hunt. Samuel L. Jackson's chemistry with Willis gave the film spark, and the riddles added a new wrinkle. Still, the finale circled back to the old rhythm. McClane one-on-one with the villain. The formula still ruled. By the time Live Free or Die Hard arrived, the structure had ballooned to comic book levels. McClane wasn't just outsmarting terrorists. He was taking down cybervillains, driving cars into helicopters, and surviving stunts that belonged in the Matrix. Fans on forums mocked it as McClane meets the Matrix, proof that the series was straining credibility. Then came A Good Day to Die Hard, a parody of itself. Instead of sharp tension or resourceful improvisation, instead, audiences were handed oversized CGI chase scenes through Moscow and nuclear threats that felt like scraps from an abandoned Bond draft. The tight, claustrophobic suspense that once powered the series was gone. What remained was spectacle without weight. Meanwhile, other franchises adapted. Mission Impossible leaned hard into death-defying stunts, while Fast and Furious reinvented itself from street racing into globe-spanning heists. Die Hard never pulled off that kind of rebirth. It kept circling the same track, swapping inventions for bigger blasts. Many critics now hold it up as a textbook case of sequel fatigue. When a series refuses to evolve, viewers tune out. McClane, once defined by his vulnerability and resourcefulness, became a figure of recycled explosions. And that, ironically, marked the death of Die Hard. Die Hard began as a groundbreaking action franchise, built on John McClane's grit, vulnerability, and everyman appeal. Over time, production troubles, aging stars, worn-out formulas, and studio interference chipped away at the series' core. The later films felt duller and drew sharper criticism. Still, despite those missteps, from toned-down PG-13 edits to overstuffed spectacle, the franchise's influence on action cinema is undeniable. It sparked countless imitators and set a long-lasting mark for character-driven thrills. And though McClane's later outing stumbled, the spirit of the original lives on, cementing Die Hard as a cultural icon whose legacy is impossible to erase. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, be safe, and thanks everyone.